Ever since I saw Lost in Translation for the first time many years ago, I have been trying to find movies with that same vibe. It's difficult to explain that vibe, but it's like the vibe of a lonely young woman drifting around a foreign land, just trying to figure out her life. It's something like that. And I've seen up to 40 or 40 something movies that people have suggested to me that have that same vibe. And out of those 40 something movies, I have chosen 25 movies that I think best replicate that same vibe that Lost in Translation had.
Before Sunrise. With this movie, Richard Linklater perfected his filmmaking style of just having two characters talk and not much of a story guiding them. The reason Richard Linklater gets away with it is because his characters are always really interesting, the dialogue is always really interesting to the point where you don't really need a story anymore, because just hearing these characters talk and their interactions are enough to be engaged with the film. This movie has two of the most interesting characters that Richard Linklater has ever created, with Celine and Jesse, played really well by Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy, who put so much of their real selves into the role that it makes the role real and natural and kind of blur the lines between reality and fiction. Midnight in Paris. I wasn't a fan of how the ending made everyone look bad, but the rest of this movie is some of Woody Allen's best work. It is what you expect from Woody Allen. Funny, witty, whimsical, enjoyable, and it touches on the themes of nostalgia in a very imaginative and sweet way. Three Colors Red. This film has one of the most unlikely, yet believable and heartwarming friendships I've ever seen, and by the end even audiences would struggle to let this beautiful relationship go. Krzysztof Kieslowski's visual style is dazzling, just like in the two other Three Colors films. Her. Spike Jonze somehow managed to make the romance between Joaquin Phoenix and the disembodied voice of an AI played by Scarlett Johansson infinitely more engaging than many other romance films featuring two people. It really shows how attached we as humans can get to AI, and this script is also such a haunting exploration of modern day loneliness that certain moments might be hard to watch. In the Mood for Love. This masterpiece by Wong Kar-wai is the single biggest inspiration behind Lost in Translation. That's probably enough to sell you on it, but there are also some of the best subtle acting performances of all time by both Tony Leung and Maggie Cheung, as well as Wong Kar-wai's signature one-of-a-kind visual style. The Graduate. This is the essential American classic about feeling lost when you are young, especially that time right after graduation. Dustin Hoffman is still the best actor to convey that feeling, and this story is still every bit as funny and poignant to this day. This movie is a truly great, perfect example of a timeless classic. And if you like this movie, watch The Education, which is like a British female version of The Graduate. Shithouse. This movie feels like the spiritual prequel to Cha Cha Real Smooth, one of my favorite movies of 2022. And I hate Cooper Raiff because of how relatable all of his films are to me on such a personal level. They feel like an invasion of privacy. I hate you, Cooper Raiff. Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. An incredibly heartbreaking but beautiful movie that uses an imaginative science fiction concept to explore themes of heartbreak, regret, and how hard it is to truly forget a person. Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet are great, Michel Gondry has a knack for surreal visuals, and Charlie Kaufman continues to be one of the most original screenwriters ever. A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. This is an Iranian movie about a lonely vampire lady. It's weird, it's offbeat, it's super stylish, oddly romantic, and I'm all for it. Can't wait for whatever Anna Lily Armipor cooks up next. Past Lives. This movie is quiet, contemplative, profound. It's about all the lives we didn't choose and all the people we left behind. It will emotionally destroy you. It is an emotionally devastating movie, and it will make you question every life decision you ever made in your life. But it is definitely worth watching. Frances Ha. Still one of the most realistic and relatable portrayals of a girl struggling with life and adulthood, which is why it's so touching, so heartwarming and heartfelt without ever really trying to be. Just watching Frances switch between jobs, trying to find a place to live, making new friends, it's something that everyone can relate to. Noah Baumbach's dialogue, as always, is sensitive, honest, and funny, and has shades of some of Woody Allen's work. Once. This is a raw, realistic portrayal of two people connecting, so much so that it sometimes feels like a documentary because of how naturalistic it is. These actors feel like real, ordinary people you might bump into on the street, and every event feels natural and unscripted. The beauty of this movie is how ordinary their lives are, but how extraordinary their relationship is. Taste of Cherry. Abbas Kiarostami's masterpiece about a suicidal taxi driver is just as hard-hitting today, with some really profound dialogue and philosophical arguments about the meaning of life. It's really minimalistic, it's unsentimental and naturalistic, but that's what keeps the movie grounded and realistic the whole way through. Broken Flowers. This is a Jim Jarmusch movie, so you know it's gonna be slow, but it's worth it for the more contemplative moments, this time on mortality, growing old, and just questioning your life decisions. Bill Murray once again shows that he's a really capable, dramatic actor. And if you like this movie, check out Mystery Train and so many other great Jim Jarmusch films. Millennium Mambo. This movie is as much of a snapshot of Taiwan clubbing culture as it is a universal tale of being young, wild, and free. Ho Xiaoxian's vision of Taiwan is wholly unique, and Sushi is absolutely glowing with charm and beauty here. A Ghost Story. This movie was already deep and profound in its first hour, but the more this story progresses, the more it morphs into something beyond anything I could have ever imagined. This movie is truly great. It's truly profound, and I mean that by every sense of the word. It is a very slow movie, but that is necessary to create its atmosphere, and you could really feel like the pain of grief just coming off from every frame of this movie. It's a deeply emotionally affecting movie. I hope David Lowery is okay, because I can't imagine how a normal person would have made this film. Right Now, Wrong Then. Hong Sang-soo is such an honest and vulnerable director that his films often come across as biographical. And this movie is no exception. The emotions feel real, the dialogue feels spontaneous, Kim Min-hee's acting feels really natural, and the main character of this movie, it just feels like a self-insert for Hong Sang-soo himself. And this is also why Hong Sang-soo is one of my favorite directors. Watch this movie and then watch On the Beach at Night Alone right after this. It makes for a good double feature. Asako 1 and 2. This is the movie by Drive My Car director Ryusuke Hamaguchi, and the main character of this movie can be a little bit hard to read. But the unique concept of this movie makes it really worth watching, because it's a really clever metaphor for how our past continually affects our future and all of the decisions we make in the present, for better or for worse. Once again, Ryusuke Hamaguchi has a great eye for detail and letting the audience observe situations for themselves. Leaving Las Vegas. This is a great love story set in Las Vegas with some career highlight performances from both Elizabeth Shue and Nicolas Cage. It is also unusually grounded in realism, especially for like a Hollywood romance film. It feels really real and gritty, and there's a lot of moments of genuine tragedy, but there's also a lot of hopeful moments as well. Paris, Texas. This movie features Harry Dean Stanton and his best performance ever as a mysterious and tortured old man in search of a certain something. Wim Wenders was one of my favorite directors, and he really knows how to make you care for his character and his journey. And this leads to an emotional roller coaster of a movie where you're really invested in the journey that the main character is taking. Punch Drunk Love. This is Paul Thomas Anderson at his most romantic and personal, but the real star here is Adam Sandler, believe it or not, who delivers one of his best performances as a shy, introverted guy, but with a lot of repressed rage and anger. I mean, you just really feel for his character and everything he's going through. Blue Jay, a small, stripped back, back to basics movie that's predominantly just two actors. That's it. There's one actor who comes up for like 5 minutes, but the rest of the movie is just Sarah Paulson and Mark Duplass. And I like how back to basics and simple this movie is, because it really lets you focus on their interactions and their relationship. Some parts can get a little bit too melodramatic, but mostly it feels very intimate. Emily. Jean-Pierre Jeunet's version of Paris is this whimsical, imaginative, and quirky place that is really fun to be in, but the real heart of this movie is with the main character of Emily, because her character is actually a surprisingly deep and sensitive portrayal of how introverts think and act. Her extreme shyness might come across as frustrating at times, but she's still a really endearing character. Columbus. I'm not sure why this movie needed this many scenery shots, but Kogonada is still a really talented new director, especially with this film being his first ever film. He knows how to create emotions, but still keep things very realistic, very grounded, very quiet and subtle. There is a sense of calmness to his films that really makes space for all of the dialogue and interactions in his film. Beginners. I want to give this movie a 10 just for how cute that dog is. This is classic Mike Mills. It is tender, empathetic, really sensitive to its characters, and that's a kind of bittersweet tone going through the whole movie. The way the movie shows memories is really clever, using a lot of flashbacks and non-linear storytelling to really show how the past continually affects the present as well as the future, for better or for worse. I feel like I'm saying the same thing that I said in another movie earlier.
So out of these 25 movies, which one of them is the best one to watch if you like Lost in Translation? Well, I would say just dive into Sofia Coppola's filmography. Her other movies like The Virgin Suicides and Somewhere pretty much have that same vibe. Even Marie Antoinette, even though that one was a period film. But if you're talking about movies made by other people, then I think her is the perfect double feature to watch with Lost in Translation back to back. It's like watching a conversation between Spike Jonze and Sofia Coppola, who are ex-lovers, and they're like having this conversation through film about their own experience or their own perspective in this relationship. It's really, really interesting stuff. And also watch all of the 10 out of 10 movies that I mentioned, because those are absolute classics.